In this video we're going to be talking about the Cisco Layer 3 switch, more specifically a 3750G switch, which I'm on at the moment. What is a Layer 3 switch? Well, it's a Layer 2 switch as well as Layer 3. What do I mean by Layer 2 and 3? Well, the OSI reference model is what I'm referring to there. Layer 2 obviously is data link, where traditional switches sit. And Layer 3 is obviously network, which is where IP routing takes place, IP addresses are described, etc, etc. So traditionally, Layer 3 is for routers. So by having a Layer 3 switch, then we've got a normal Layer 2 switch and a router all in one package. And essentially, yes, that's what we've got. So today I'm just going to show you how versatile these switches can be, what you can do on them, what you can configure. It's just going to be a basic overview, not too in depth. So let's get into it. So if you've used the Cisco's operating system before, we're just at the command line interface now, connected via the console port on the back of the Layer 3 switch. So we've got our regular user mode, privilege exec mode, and global configuration mode. Let's give our switch a host name, so we call it Layer 3 switch. And we're going to create an interface now, a virtual interface for VLAN 10. So we do interface to VLAN 10, IP address 10.1.0. We don't have to enter no shutdown. The virtual interface is up by default, and now if we go to show IP in brief, we will see our VLAN 10 interface right here. There's an IP address of 192.168.10.1, and the status is down at the moment. Not administratively down, just down, because there are no ports configured for VLAN 10 on the switch. So now, a routed port. What does a routed port mean? Well, traditionally, Layer 3 switches come shipped with with Layer 2 configuration. Essentially, the ports are all in Layer 2 mode. So, how do we get them out of Layer 3 mode? Well, if we go into a port and we go to 23, and we enter no switch port, that has now turned our interface into a Layer 3 routed port. So we can route in and out of the network via this port now. IP address 10.10.123.0. One thing, the Layer 3 switch by default comes shipped with a configuration on VLAN 1 to get an IP address via DHCP. And of course, all of our ports are by default in VLAN 1. Same applies to a Layer 2 switch. All the ports come shipped with in VLAN 1. So, how do we get rid of that? Well, we go into interface VLAN 1 and we do no IP address. Should get rid of the IP address for us. Yep. So we'll go back into our interface now. We'll do IP address 10.123.255.255. We don't have to enter no shutdown. It should be up by default. And now if we go to, we should be able to ping my home router. Yep, there we go. And if we go to show IP in brief, we should be able to see, there we go. So 10.10.123 on port 1023, and up and up. You might be wondering why there's this extra number here on the interface ports. Basically, the Layer 3, this particular model, is capable of stacking. And stacking is a feature of the Layer 3 switches, and also Layer 2. Some 2960 models can do come with stacking as well. Basically, it means that you can group together, physically group them, two physical switches into one virtual switch. So essentially, for example, if I was to stack this with another model of the same spec, I would essentially have 56 ports to configure. And what I'd see is I'd see 1 through 10/1 through to 10/28, and then after here I'd see 20/1 representing the second member of the stack. In the stack you have one master and one member, or one master and multiple members. When a member fails, the master takes over. Where would this be useful for us? For instance, distribution layer switches. You had a stack as your core and you've got distribution layer switches and you want to provide high availability and redundancy. Well, we do that with multiple uplinks to the core from the distribution layer switches. But rather than taking all the uplinks into one switch, we'd spread one from each distribution layer switch into one of each of the physical members of the virtual stack switch. And what does that provide? Well, that provides, for instance, if one of the physical members of the stack went down, the other one's still up, that takes over the master role, and your distribution layer switches can still get out of the network via the new master switch in the physical stack. So basically it's for high availability and redundancy purposes, and also to expand your switch. So if we go back to our configuration now, so we've configured a routed port and we can get out to the internet. Maybe? No? Oh, we haven't configured our route. Sorry. So, IP routing first of all, that's the command to turn this switch into a routing device. And then we can enter our route 000, and it goes to go via 10.1. So now, should be able to, yes, there we go. So what did I just there? I did a default route, a static default route, to route anything that the router inside of the switch doesn't know about, via 10.10.10.1. So, access control lists. You can apply access control lists on the switch to control access. So what we'll do, we can do extended access control lists, and we're going to permit TCP any, and we're going to apply this to our virtual interface. So IP access group 101 inbound. So what have I done there? If you're not familiar with access control lists, I've applied the access control list 101, which is just a name. It doesn't have any bearing on the effect of the access list, except where you put it. We're going to permit TCP connections from any source to any destination equaling to port 80 HTTP traffic, and I've applied that on the inbound direction of the VLAN 10. Well, what is the inbound direction? If you don't know, there's inbound and outbound. So inbound is if you're standing inside of the switch and you're looking out onto the local area network VLAN 10. Inbound is traffic coming into that port to be filtered. Outbound is if you're still looking out, it's traffic going past you out onto the local area network. That's how I like to think of it anyway. So now let's do a DHCP server. IP DHCP pool, VLAN 10, IP address, sorry, not IP address, we're going to do network 192.168.10.0. Default router 192.168.10.1, DNS server 8.8.8.8. We could limit the range, IP excluded address, so limit the range. We don't want to give out addresses in this range from the low IP address 192.168.10.1 to 192.168.10.199. So effectively, we're having a range from 192.168.10.200 to 192.168.10.254. Okay, well, I hope you found all of this information informative, and I hope it showed you the versatility of the Layer 3 switch. That's only scratching the surface. Obviously, we've got the routing protocols, route to RIP we can do version 2, and we can advertise networks from there. We can do router, we can do EIGRP. You know, the only one you can't do, obviously, let me explain something to you. 1 second. There are 3 flavors of imaging, images rather, for the layer 3 switch, the 3750 at least anyway. LAN base, IP base, and IP services. So the LAN base is a very limited image. It allows some layer 3 functionality like switch virtual interfaces, some very minimal routing, I believe. I've not actually experienced it myself, but that's what the Cisco website says. IP bases, which I'm running here at the moment, so that's more advanced routing. You can actually, you know, use routing protocols as I just demonstrated, and you've got IP services, which allows you to go up to OSPF with the dynamic routing protocols. It's got a few more QoS features. IP base also has QoS features. Yeah. How would you find out what image you're running? Show version. Right at the bottom of the show version output, it will show you what image you're running. It'll say IP base or LAN base or IP services. I can show you the layer 2 commands. We can do G101. Just your regular layer 2 commands. Just for anyone's reference who hasn't actually seen. Then we can do access VLAN 10. Does not exist, so creating VLAN 10. We can do spanning tree commands. Port fast. So what does port fast do? It allows when the switch boots up and calculates spanning tree, or anytime it's calculating spanning tree, it won't include that interface in its calculation, so the interface will come up straight away. You must do this for things like servers and hosts, printers, etc. Anything that's not a switch basically, or links off to a hub. This essentially is another switch. Yeah, I mean, you go through a few show commands. Show IP route shows you your routing table. We can see that 10.10.10. The reason our switch virtual interface, our 192.168.10.0 interface, is not in there is because there's no VLAN ports up on the switch. Therefore, it will not be installed in the routing table because the actual interface is not up. If you have a look, I'll show IP in brief. The protocol is still down on VLAN 10. So if we were to, let me see if I can get that up. We can go into G1024 and do switch port trunk encapsulation.1Q. So you have to choose the encapsulation type on the layer 3 switch. There are only 2 options, .1Q and ISL, also negotiated, but there are 2 encapsulation types, .1Q and ISL. ISL is not used, it's Cisco proprietary. I've never seen it used, I've never heard of anyone using it. I should imagine there is being used somewhere, but modern day, no. Switch port mode trunk. And we don't have to. Normally, if you wanted to limit the amount of VLANs that travel through the trunk interface, you can go switch port trunk allowed, bracket spell, and VLANs, and then you just list your VLANs. So 10, 20, 30, blah blah blah, on and on. But by default, the implicit command exists which says switch port trunk allowed VLAN all. So we don't need to enter that. I don't know if that interface come up yet. Yes, so now we can see that it's up because the trunk port is connected to another switch with another trunk port. So that's really, I think that's really it for the layer 3 switching. I hope you found it informative. Let me know if there's anything else I can cover for you, but I hope this has shown you the versatility of the switch and what you can do with it. Please leave feedback in the comments below. Thank you very much.